What's up? How's everyone doing?
Was that not super long? It felt long.
That
the long intro
was long.
like leading it.
But it's the Aspire party, so it's okay. Because now the triangles dance, because John made it work like that. So.
Like, it's only 2 minutes. I've seen folks that have half an hour lead time for their stuff.
This is true, but I'm assuming those folks are doing other stuff while it's playing.
Right.
Like, we were all just sitting here in the studio, not able to talk to each other, waiting for the thing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, just wait. And, you know, we always start it almost too late. So this was a fun 16 hours or so. I saw on Twitter that Dan Clark subscribed to the What's New PR. And in the last 24 hours, because he was waiting to see when it was going to come out and like wanted to see what was new. And in the last 24 hours has just had infinite emails. And I was like, yeah, next time, just don't do that. Because the midnight Fowler force push is really
Can we back up a minute and kind of introduce and kick things off here?
I look at our producer is trying to rein us in. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, it's so good to see you, friends. This is, of course, the .NET Aspire release party. .NET Aspire 9.2 is now available. We've got blog posts. We've got documentation. David Pine is joining us, our esteemed documentation writer, helping with all things out there. Thank you so much for your help with that. But Maddy's right. The last 24 hours have been full of fury. We've seen GitHub edits like crazy. There are GitHub code spaces out there that are going nuts with the amount of edits and pulls and pushes that have happened as we've updated and gotten ready for the release here.
Isn't that every release though of Aspire?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I would say this one was no more or less chaotic. Maybe more chaotic than 9.
This was worse. Are you kidding me?
I think 9, we were really on top of it because it was like .NET Conf and we had this messaging and we did all these. We were like, yeah, we're going to have a meeting and we're going to click all the buttons. And this time Jeff is on his stream before this. And I'm like, I'm force pushing your blog. Do you see this link? Is the link up? So we're fun.
Yes.
I will say, I use AI like crazy to help me like get that stuff out. And it was funny because I was like, how do I get the content and the code sample for each of these features? So I basically was scraping PRs and copy and pasting swaths of like code samples from tests and the description of PRs and the issues. And it's like, write me a what's new for this blob. And it did a really good job for a ton of it actually. So
it did a lot better this time than it did when I tried to do this for 9.1. Because 9.1 it like couldn't quite disseminate what was going on. It's nice to see things actually get better.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if we should like create more of a paper trail for the AI to like to reconstruct the actual like feature. Right. What's the feature? What are the APIs?
I think you should write stuff down. Who is this guy?
I was just about to say, Fowler?
No. I didn't say that. I said leave a paper trail. So maybe like commit messages, PR messages.
The AI can write those too now. So basically, we can have the AI prepare itself.
It can feed itself
later on. Yeah.
I believe the commits I sent in the last 24 hours said tweaks.
Yes.
Final.
Yep.
And as I'm going through, I wake up and I'm having my morning cup of coffee. I'm getting ready for my stream. I see all of these comments. Hey, you need to change this in the blog post from our Australian teammates. I'm like, okay, look what we're gonna do here.
Okay, the crowd's getting restless. They're asking for
I know,
demos
you guys
already.
are getting antsy. Sorry, you don't like to just yap?
Demos.
Let's talk about what we're here for, I guess.
Yeah, well, first, let me share some links. Linky links. Including the amazing, monstrous What's New, and the accommodating blog post, which I literally just closed for some reason.
It was going to be a small release.
It was going to be a small release. I remember planning this and being like, no, this one's not going to be too crazy. Psych.
And I like the stuff that's in this release.
Yeah.
I think we did a great job delivering stuff that provides a lot of value and really encourages that update.
Yeah, the theme for this release, because we try to like come up with themes and have a thing. It was really like foundational stuff. Like it was groundwork. We were calling it the groundwork release because we wanted to build a bunch of things to build towards features for 9.3 and 9.4 and 10. And then we finished a bunch of them and decided we were going to ship them. That's crazy.
Fowler, you're so loud typing that
Yeah.
we literally can't hear Maddy.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous.
That's what happens on calls too.
That's what happens when your microphone is like directly over your keyboard. Like, I know it is on your desk.
How about you stop trying to write Discord messages and join the stream for an hour, David? Fowler, not mine. No, but yeah, so the theme was really like foundational stuff, and then we ended up finishing a bunch of the stuff that we were building the foundation for, or at least finishing like the first rev of it, right? And so we just started throwing stuff in here. There's a ton of actual stable improvements, tons of dashboard stuff. The resource graph is in there. The what's new, the blog, James's blue sky as always. Like really, really good updates. But I think what Fowler and Damian, are you demoing your stuff today?
I can do whatever. That's fine. Like if you want me to show like that new method that I wrote,
I was gonna say, so
my
Damian,
amazing work.
6 months, 8 months after telling everybody to build their own extension method for adding an HTT command.
Oh, that's right.
Finally did in fact build it into Aspire after making it the way that everybody should do it. And now I get to go delete code in every single one of my repos.
Woohoo!
So that's I think that, or the other thing you did, whatever, you can show that. I know Fowler is going to show a bunch of stuff that I was a little anxious about talking about because it's all in preview, but it's very cool. And it's some stuff that we showed to folks at MVP Summit a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
There's some new deployment stuff. Rhymes with stalker. That doesn't work. Yeah.
What?
I don't know, Maddy, you're flailing. You're flailing. Quick, someone.
There's a meet the parents.
Someone needs to share their
here.
screen so I can put it up on the screen.
All right, Fowler, come on. Show us the stuff.
No.
Someone bring up the what's new.
Someone
Let's have a
screen share
look.
and go through what's new first.
Yeah, let's go through what's
I'm
new.
trying to update my samples in 1992 release.
All right, who wants to bring up the what's new? Go,
Don't make me
Maddy.
do it. Don't make
Go,
me do
Maddy.
it.
Wow.
Show
Fine.
your huge screen.
I know. God, but how am I supposed to watch the chat? No, okay. What's
I
new
can
in
do
Aspire? 9.2. Oh no, I moved the window. Okay. Share.
This isn't our first time doing this, right? Like we've.
Can you believe I did this for the Maui? I did the Maui
Sure.
community stand up every month for 5 years, and I'm
There's a
still
reason we
like
call it the
this.
party.
Here, I
So-
got you. I got you. Hang on, Maddy. I got
I
you.
got it. Add to the stage. Da-da-da-da-da. All right. Congrats, everybody. We made it. Big fan. Okay. There's a lot. First and foremost, to be the fun police, if you are deploying to ACA SQL, whether it's Azure SQL Storage or Postgres SQL Storage, there is a breaking change because we made things more secure. And so if you did anything regarding using like all of the permissions we were giving you in a managed identity to deploy those things, you have to go and actually manually set those now. Just a heads up. We don't like breaking people. Unfortunately, this was not only something that people really wanted, and actually it was a good feature, but an important security thing.
Yeah.
So
I think-
yeah, we
I think
did a little
generally-
bit of breaking. Just
Generally, we avoid breaking, as Mike said, in minor releases. But this one was special because we had to do some foundational work in the deployment space to make it so you can be more flexible in the future.
Right.
This is a big one.
Perfect. So, anyways,
What's new?
what's new? Okay, the first what's new on here is actually getting to remove a line of code from your app host, which is not super
Yay.
exciting, but I love it. So, no longer you need to say is Aspire host. That's it. That's all it is. Oh, this is what you need to show, Damian.
Yeah, this was what I was actually referring to.
Oh,
I forgot
well,
about the other one.
would you like to describe?
Yeah, so from the very first time that we announced, people have been asking, they see the dashboard, they go, "Girl, the dashboard's amazing," but these links for my resources showing up as localhost, some port, a kind of a bummer. I'd like to have like more pretty URLs, like custom URLs with a different host name, or I'd like to be able to add a path to that so that the link is a deep link into something in the application or the resource that you're orchestrating. To date, the subpathing we've only really supported for ASP.NET Core projects by virtue of launch profiles. So if you had a launch profile in there and you had a launch URL that was relative, then the dashboard would kind of like extract all that and push all that up. But other than that, there wasn't a good way to customize that. There actually was a way, it just wasn't a good way. You had to write code that sort of pushed through the notification system and send a resource event in order to say, hey, my status snapshot now includes this URL, which is this instead of the last one. And that's not very nice. There was no way to just declare that my URL or URLs for a resource are X, Y, and Z. Well, now you can do that. And so you can see the code sample on the screen here where I'm adding Postgres in this case, with pgadmin, and then inside the with pgadmin callback, which lets you customize the resource that represents the pgadmin container, you can see a call to resource.withURL for endpoint. So there's a few new methods there. There's with URL, which you just add a URL statically, like here's a string that is URL and here's the display text that I want. You can do with URL for endpoint, which you pass an endpoint name to, like you see here, HTTP is the endpoint name. And then you get a callback that lets you modify the URL associated with that endpoint. So all endpoints on resources, which is what we used to show in the dashboard, automatically get a URL, right? Makes sense. You have an endpoint, you get a URL, you can customize that URL now with this callback. And then the other method is with URLs. And that one basically gives you a callback that where we call you at a certain time when the app is booting up. And we say, well, here's all the URLs for this resource. Party on them. You can remove them, you can edit them, you can add new ones. And that way you can just like completely customize the URLs that show up for any given resource now on the dashboard. Very clearly, I just want to make sure that people understand this is really only about URL showing up in the dashboard. This is not about setting a URL that flows all the way through to deployment when you publish or something, but don't rule it out. Maybe one day we'll do that. But right now, this is just about what gets displayed on the dashboard. But if you already have done the work to do things like configure custom hosts on your machine, either through a custom DNS server or through editing your host file or something like that, you can now write the C# code so that those links will show up appropriately as well. You're not limited to setting URLs like for endpoints on that resource either. If you've got a more complicated scenario where you want to have one resource have a URL that's based on the endpoint of a different resource, just because from a UX point of view, the URL you want to show is contextually you want to be with one resource, but you want it to point to another one. There's a few examples where that might be true. You can do that as well. It's not restricted to just like setting the URL for that resource. So we're hoping that this will free up people to customize how the dashboard looks, create helpful URLs for each resource. And so it's much easier for people to use that dashboard to launch into various aspects of their distributed application. So there you go. Long time feature that's been asked for. We finally got that one over the line in 9.2.
So I abuse that feature just a little bit to add a link to my GitHub source. So I can click,
there you go.
Right. It's there next to all the URLs for the website. Oh, what's the URL the source for this? And I can open GitHub in another tab right from the Aspire dashboard.
Nice. Nice.
That's a good idea. Anthony put in the chat, he has to deprecate this blog post where he walks through how to do this.
That means we're listening.
Anthony has come up with some really, really cool ways to take Aspire and tweak it and extend it and to take some Aspire inspiration. Is that a thing?
Some aspiration? No.
And grow from some of the things the community is suggesting. I think is terrific.
Oh yeah. Anthony, keep blogging. I love them. Sometimes I learn things from them and I'm like, oh, that was a good way to explain that.
And I mean, some Aspire inspiration is going to come a little bit later on here in the what's new.
Yeah,
when we get the publishers.
I wanted to call out too, just on this feature, who's the person who did the very late review of this, Fowler? And then I did a follow-up change to address their feedback. Who was that? Alex, you're muted.
AppsCom.
Yeah, AppsCom. So, like, you have a very
AppsCom.
We're very attentive GitHub community member on the Aspire repo.
He's good. He just like
very attentive, and so
yeah,
he pulled the code and he tried out the with URLs feature like not that far. Yeah, there you go. There he is.
Alex!
And sent and logged a bunch of issues, and so I was able to do a round of feedback edits, updating the feature based on his feedback very late before we shipped, which was great. And then there's a couple of other ones that I'll look at fixing in 9.3 because they weren't, they're just kind of like more, yeah, that'd be nice, but they're not critical to make the feature work well. But yeah, big shout out. Thanks for folks who do that type of work for us. It really helps us ship good feature experiences, first up.
Alex is notably the Powerpuff Girl like style profile picture on GitHub, so I always call him Powerpuff Guy. And he has a normal picture on YouTube, which really just scared me. So
it's kind of jarring, yeah. That's
a little bit. I'm like, oh, that is a real person. No. Anyways, okay, all right. I'll cruise through them.
We should go faster.
Yeah. Resource graph is there. Like Damian put in the chat a few minutes ago, we have been having a draft of this for a year. Is this? Oh, you can't see my. I'm just sharing the tab. It's okay.
There should be a picture of it here in this What's New.
I know. I tried to add a video, but I didn't know how to do the video in the down that Pine uses, and so I gave up.
It's on the blog post if you.
Yeah, you can flip over to the blog post and have.
Yes, I have to unshare and reshare because I shared the tab instead of the window. So hold on.
Yeah, James submitted those, and he's like, "Go look on my socials to grab the images," and I'm like, "I can't take a video from Twitter or Blue Sky, X, and it's just so I was like, come on, just embed them better.
I tried to put it in the thing, but in the folder, but I didn't know how to. So look at this. Look at that. That's a graph.
You're not sharing.
You're not sharing anymore.
We're not looking at anything. We're looking at you.
It's so amazing.
I know I look great, but I don't look as great as the resource.
There we go. Now we're looking good. Look at that.
Whoa.
Look at that.
It's all D3.
And
all
you can pick them up and move them around.
It's
I love
very
it.
fun.
And
it's
you
like
can still click on them to get details. And those green checks are live health checks. So if you look at it while it's starting, they'll start out like with the other status, right? Or you could go and stop one, I guess, and then flip back to the graph and you would see it. Do we expose commands on here? We don't yet, right? That's
not yet.
It's coming in a PR in lane 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
and then what's great about that is they're color coded to match the new icons.
The new icons on the table.
Oh, why did that not zoom well? That didn't zoom well.
Eye candy.
But okay, I'm gonna throw something out there with the resource graph. I'd really like to be able to capture that as an image so I can embed in architecture documents.
You just screen cap.
I was gonna say Win Shift S, Command Control Shift 4. That would be cool.
Windows and Mac already built that feature for us. We don't need to.
Windows there you go.
Well, it's actually funny that you mentioned that, Jeff. I actually, for the docs, I was tired of capturing like the dashboard screenshots. So I actually wrote a Playwright app that spins up the app host and takes screenshots for me. I just kind of set up so now it helps quite a bit.
Oh, that's smart.
Export as mermaid, says chat.
Yeah. I think that's another Anthony blog post, isn't it? Didn't he do a mermaid post? You don't ruin that one now. Okay. Pausing telemetry, big win. So if it's going too fast, you can just pause it. And I believe what it does is it stops collecting it all up. And then when you hit play, it just goes to live.
Yeah, we had a long debate about what the right behavior here was for a pause button. And do we leave room for ourselves to add a stop button in the future or some other type of thing? I think they ended up coming up with a really good implementation. So now when you pause it, as Maddy said, it stops the ingress and you get a message, like a very clear message at the bottom that says we have currently paused capturing. And then if you flip over to like the console logs, there's a message in the console log history that says it was paused at this point. That's why there's no logs during this period. So I think if they've done a great job of making it very clear what happens when you hit pause. And as you said, it's great if you've got like a stream of stuff coming in and you just want to like pause so you can look at stuff. But yeah, the trade-off is we just drop telemetry while it's paused. So
sweet.
I see the message about a 404 on the breaking changes league.
I'm on it.
Okay.
All right. Someone talk about cardinality or whatever numbers while I fix this link.
This one's not super important, to be honest. This is like if you have a really bad, if you create a histogram and you go outside the bounds, I believe this just tells you you're doing something. No, this is the cardinality on the metric itself.
Yeah.
I see. Probably number of dimensions. This is like edge casey stuff.
It's edge casey. It's just like
warns you know.
It warns you when there's
was-
missing data,
I was
basically, if
skip
you're
and
sending
scroll.
data in a way that can't be represented. So
This is not interesting.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Well-
It's like a bug fix.
UTC baby.
Yay, UTC. Awesome.
All right, here's the command stuff. which
yeah,
I'm-
so like I showed this when we launched 9.0 as a sample from the samples repo. We took that and we made it real. So now you can add custom commands to a resource that are HTTP commands, which basically means that when you click the button in the dashboard, it sends an HTTP request to some endpoint that you asked for, and that's it. So it means now you could, if you've got sort of utility like endpoints or endpoints on your apps, and you want to expose those as buttons in the dashboard, it's very, very easy to do that now.
Sweet.
Clickety clack on the keyboard.
Who's
I was going to
clacking?
ask, is there
I
any
thought I had
plans- is there any plans with HTTP custom commands to like allow custom icons, or is that kind of beyond the scope of what
You can set the icons already. That's there. That's right there. It says icon name.
Right,
So
right.
when you
But
say
that's the
custom,
built-in.
no. So right now, just like the rest of the dashboard, you're limited to specifying icons that are within the Fluent UI icon set, which is
Yep.
hundreds of icons. Custom icons, I actually logged an issue just yesterday to support custom icons for resources. And in doing that, that's a natural extension. Would be like, great, if we're going to support custom icons for anything, we should support it for commands as well. So yeah,
Cool.
maybe we'll tackle that at some point coming up.
Sweet.
There's a comment here. We were talking about some of the things that are showing up on the metrics. Martin.net says people like to add user ID to metrics. That's bad. Please, that helps them. Please tell them that they shouldn't be doing that. Sounds like an idea for some sort of an analyzer that should be added. That could be created to help enforce some better practices when you're creating and logging metrics.
Sounds good.
Yep.
I don't know. Martin suggested it, so maybe it
Yeah,
doesn't sound
we're
good.
not going to do sounds great. Next.
Yeah, true.
Scroll.
True. All right.
This is my pet resource. My pet resource I built. This one is today. You can add a connection string, but that means you have to kind of express the entire thing in config. This lets you basically dynamically create and poke holes in a pre-form string. So let's say you had, the example here is OpenAI. The first part is pretty much fixed. It's always the OpenAI endpoint, but the key comes from the user. So you can kind of say, I want to make the user pass the key, but not the entire string. So they don't have to understand the format. They just have to understand like what the values are. That
Question. Is there not an overload that just takes the interpolated string?
two overloads?
directly?
Yeah.
Oh, so we should update that sample.
The string one we don't have.
Well, we don't?
This sample got changed, by the way. Like it
Okay.
was. There's another overload that is easier to use. than
Yeah.
this one.
Okay. We should update
yeah.
this. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, the intent was you want to just like not have to make a custom resource, but then compose a string from various sources. So yeah, that's in.
Yay. All right.
Image
Okay.
pull policy, pretty simple
You
one.
went past. Yeah, there we go. Image policy. Image pull is a good one, actually.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of times, either personally or we've seen issues logged, people have run into problems, and it turns out it's because they have an old image on their machine because they're using a tag that isn't tied to a specific version. So if you use a tag like latest, your machine will pull latest, and then 8 months later, someone will ask for latest. They'll go, yeah, I've already got the latest tag. It's fine. Because the default pull policy on a lot of container hosts is just to use the one they've got locally if the tag matches. So now you can specify. You can say, hey, first of all, using the latest tag is typically not a great idea. It's quick and dirty, and like it gets the job done, but it will usually bite you later on if you're leaving those images local. Second, you can now control this and say, no, I just want to always pull every time I run Aspire, so I always make sure I've got the latest version.
The PG admin container, when I say with PG admin, with my Postgres resources, it wakes up and says, oh, you know what? You're 4 versions behind. So when I set up PG admin, I like to say use the latest. And whenever I see that message pop up in the PG admin user interface, I end up going into Docker and pull the latest version of the latest tag. This is great now because I can just forget about that. And when there's a new one, I won't get nagged.
Maybe. So like that's an interesting example because PG admin is actually a resource that we control. And so we update the tag on that when we update Aspire. And so if you have a really old one, it suggests that PG admin is releasing very quickly. So it means that even between like the 2 months between us doing a release, they've done 4 releases. And so, because when you call with pgadmin, we're saying add pgadmin with this tag, and we don't use latest. Like we specifically try not to use the latest tag because of all the problems we talked about. We lock it to a specific version. And then for each Aspire release, we update them. And so if you update to 9.2 today and you call it with pgadmin, you should be getting a newer version of pgadmin than you did with 9.1. Now, that said, as you pointed out, you can control that. You can say with pgadmin, get the callback, and then you can modify the tag to whatever you like. And now you could set this as well and say, like you just said, you could say latest and always pull it, but then the trade-off is you have to wait for it to get pulled every time.
The other good thing to do with pgadmin and what's the MySQL admin one also, you run into a similar thing. Nice thing to do with that is with lifetime persistent, because you don't need to restart it every time.
Fancy. Awesome. All right. Yeah, new file APIs. You don't have to do the mount stuff anymore. It just copies it under the hood. That's exciting.
That's a big deal, by the way. Like this is another area a lot of folks have trouble, because bind mounts mean that you're at the whim of whatever your host OS is allowing in terms of file permissions. And so what often people run into is they get it working on Windows, and then someone on their team pulls on a Mac, and then it doesn't work because the execute permission is not set on the file or something. Or the container's running as a different account than what the host is running as. And so this new API was added by the folks that we work with internally on the component that like orchestrates everything in Aspire. And this thing will now basically let you set content from the host that will then, they will just take care of getting into the container for you. So we updated all of our own integrations that used to use bind mounts to use this. And so people should check this out if they're currently using bind mounts for certain things. It might make your life a bit easier.
Yeah, and we changed a bunch of our integrations to use the API under the covers. So before pgadmin, for example, would create a file in your temp folder dynamically. Now it can avoid that.
Yep. Tons of integration updates. Do we want to talk about database stuff or come back to it if we have time at the end?
This one's important to at least discuss, because people are very confused. When you call add database in the app host today, it does not create the database. In 9.2, we made a couple of changes to give you more control over what happens. And by default, we attempt to create an empty database for SQL Server and Postgres. These are the two most used integrations for databases. So we started here first. We're going to get feedback, see if what we built is useful for users, and then figure out from there what we should do, like for everything else.
We'll definitely do more here. This is, as Fowler said, just to start. And it's just SQL Server and Postgres, and it works quite differently between SQL Server and Postgres just because of some of the semantic differences between how scripts run on those two platforms. The thing to be clear here is that script, you can see in the sample there's a custom creation script that was added in that specific example. You don't need to do that, right? Like we'll just do one by default, but you can customize it. That is literally passing a string. So you don't give us a script file, you pass a string, and then we execute that using .NET from the app host, like over ADO.NET, right? It's not pushing a script onto the container or anything and trying to execute it. So you just got to like bear in mind that this is how it's working. It does mean that it works even against like a non-container one in theory, right? But like we don't have any of those at the moment because you just use a connection string otherwise. But yeah, I think we'll explore some other models as well with this. I updated our existing container database sample yesterday. The SQL Server part of that now uses this feature, but the Postgres one doesn't, because you can't do anything other than customize the database creation itself. If you want to add tables in your init script, for example, this doesn't support that at the moment for Postgres. And so I still had to do it the way I was doing it in the Postgres container sample before. But yeah, we're going to keep exploring here, looking for feedback and look at different ways that we can kind of help people bootstrap their database instances declaratively like this, using maybe more traditional approaches like SQL files or other types of things as well. So,
yeah, we hear like, well, how do I do my migrations with Aspire and that kind of stuff all the time? Because we don't. It's the same way as usual, but it feels like we should be doing it for you. And so there's a whole world of database ops that we can and maybe will start digging into. I think this
not
is
maybe
we will, but we're going to do it carefully, and
yes,
mostly
exactly.
because database ops, as you put it, that's a really good term. it's very varied and wide, and
Yeah.
people have very strong opinions.
Yeah.
And you often just can't walk up and say, we're going to do it like this now because this app does it this way. It's like, no, like the DBA is going to tell you how they're going to do it, or whatever it might be. And data is sacred, right? In a lot of systems, the software is the transient part and the data is the part that is legacy and lives forever. And so you don't mess with that. And so we do have to be very careful about how we approach that. And so I think there's lots of different things that we can try. And we have some ideas about what to try first with regards to things like integrating EF Core more natively into Aspire orchestration so that it can streamline, your whole dev and deployment experience.
Yeah.
Damian has more reverence for the whole thing. So
I do, because I've lived through it.
Yeah.
You have
Same.
not. So Jeff has
Yeah.
as well.
I have not, and I refuse to try. I do not need that stress in my life. Thank you very
Database
much.
administrators can ruin your life.
Yeah.
If you mess with their stuff, they will ruin you.
I agree.
Either you can or you can, and if you can touch it, then we can help you orchestrate. If you can't touch it, then
Absolutely.
then you're no worse off than you were before.
That's right.
That's kinda
But to
like-
be clear, this is why EF Core itself has like 7 different ways that it can project
Bundle,
or control or migrate a
script.
database. A lot of people
Yep.
use EF Core but don't use migrations. A lot of people do model generation from databases. A lot of people use the bundles feature. Like there's so many different ways you can do it because how people do it varies so much. So we have to reflect that when we start.
This is
doing
a good comment. An EF migration integration that people aren't doing it during
Yeah.
the service startup because
we
it's a
spiked
good
it.
it's a good time to do it, but it's also like if it breaks, it breaks, and it's all over. Like
We
Yeah.
spiked it. There's a PR that was opened during 9.2, and we were trying to iterate on should you have a thing in the app post that
Yeah.
lets you run a migration as a button.
Yeah.
I think we'll end up somewhere.
I think we'll end up there.
First
I think that's
class,
the first
right?
step is you'll add
Yeah.
like an EF integration, like a hosting integration in the app host.
Yeah.
And then you'll attach resources to it. And then you'll say, yeah, like on start, I want you to auto migrate, please. And that will just run it as a separate resource. And then when you publish, one of the options would be we would use EF's migration bundles feature, and we would generate the bundle for you and drop the exe like as one of the assets. And then it's up to you to run that exe at the appropriate time during deployment. But that's a fairly nice steel thread that we could enable there. But yeah, as I said, there's a lot of variables when you come to this stuff. So
we just got a question in the chat about deploying. So do we want to go through some Azure integrations? It's already 12:35.
let's keep going.
Fowler, unmute yourself.
Oops. So yeah, I'm typing. I'm like, let me mute.
You keep doing it inverted. Yeah, it's like we keep hearing you type.
know,
And
right?
then,
You missed one there, Maddy. I think you're in the Azure section.
Oh
That's
yeah.
pretty,
Yeah.
pretty important, that one.
Top level ACA environments or CAEs as they call them in the dashboard, container app
Yeah.
environments.
So we moved before there was part of the bicep that was created by AZD. It was the container app environment and all the compute things required to kind of like push to ACA. That's now moved to the app host. So you call this method add Azure container app environment, and it gives you full control over changing anything. So at this point, the only thing AZD kind of creates as a result of the overarching deployment is it will stitch together all of the bicep things that come from the app host, including the environment, all your projects, all the apps. But the app host is in control of making the bicep for all those resources. That means you can tweak basically anything in the deployment without having to drop to %, which is like super low level and like super hacky.
so I mean, but we can't assume people know what ACA and AZD and bicep are, can we?
If they're watching this, I hope they do.
And you use Azure, then you probably know what those things are. If you don't, guess what? You don't have to worry about it.
Read the docs.
Congratulations.
Right.
It's not your problem.
If these acronyms are foreign to you, look at the what's new. ACA is Azure Container Apps, and AZD is the Azure Developer CLI. Yeah.
We have an internal tool called TLAs, 3-letter acronyms that they give to new hires so that you can search these things. And let me tell you, there's more than one ACA. Ask me how I know. So it's, it's hard to keep up with. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
This one's good, but
one's
not
good.
worth spending a lot of time on. We added
Exciting.
an integration for Azure Postgres, and it makes it seamless to connect to
Yep.
Entra ID or local containers without you having to switch between the two environments.
Yep.
That's a struggle for me with the Aspirify site.
Yep.
Yeah, this honestly, like, so making this work well, we had to go talk to the Postgres team. So like it was that hard. So
Yeah.
now it's built in. Now we did it once for you, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Call the method and it just works.
Yep.
And those are new client integrations, correct?
Correct. New
Right.
client integrations.
Right. Which you can tell because it doesn't say hosting in the namespace.
Yay! This feature is probably my favorite one, the resource deep linking.
Oh yeah.
So essentially what this means is you get to build, when you call add, add Cosmos DB, add database, add container, and you're kind of like creating all these resources in the hosting APIs, and you get a reference back to a database or a container, and you pass that reference to the application using with reference. We will capture the database, whatever you have kind of like expressed in the hierarchy. So in Cosmos, it's the account, the database, and the container. We will capture the entire hierarchy and pass that into the application. So on the application side, if you scroll down, Maddy, you can actually say add container, and that will give you a client for the container. So it keeps track of the connection to the actual database, the account, and it says I can give you a database client or a container client. So it kind of helps you navigate the API of the client library without you having to kind of understand all the layering between, first is a Cosmos database, a Cosmos account that has a database that has a container. You can just get a container in your DI container. You can get a Cosmos database container in your DI container handed to you just by using key services. Super nice. And that applies to event hubs, service bus, OpenAI deployments, and essentially anything that has a client library that can kind of reference either the overarching client or a specific thing in that client. We'll handle it for you. We didn't do storage, but storage is next.
The storage, I thought you already had that because you could reference and say, give me just the blob storage off of file storage.
You want to be able to reference a blob container directly. So add blobs, add container images, and then you can pass the images container to your application, and you can get the reference to the actual container without having to like navigate the hierarchy.
Sweet.
Big one.
Okay. This is the break for folks using Azure Postgres and Azure SQL Server. So,
and it's a change for anyone who's ever done deployment with Aspire. It changes everything fundamentally when you use it.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. But like, if you were using those things, you would need to actually do something today.
Yes.
So, yeah. So basically, we were just making one giant managed identity for everything the Aspire app host creates, which worked, but is not the like more secure by default way to do it. And we have a stance where we know we're not always going to do the most correct thing always, because things change every 2 seconds, and we are just going to try and give you the most secure by default things that we can. So when something like this pops up and we realize there's kind of something we're not actually doing right that we could pretty easily do better, we have to go fix it, and that's why we fixed it.
The other thing I think to call out is we didn't even expose modeling this before. So this was just a hidden detail before.
Right.
And so creating one made sense. It's like the whole thing was one trust boundary. We create one and you don't even get to change it. Now you can model managed identities. You can do RBAC. You can do these things in the app host using the Azure hosting integration. And as a result of that, we can have a better default because then you can change it.
Right.
Now you can actually go in and do stuff.
We don't have to give you one pseudo access to everything.
Right.
So,
but it is an extremely important detail, as you keep making out, like to realize here is that you don't just have all resources able to talk to the other resources with the same identity now, which is, like you said, good. This is a better way of doing it. You have to control who has read access, who has write access. But anyone who's done this with Azure before probably knows that it can be not as simple as one might like to be able to get the right RBAC roles configured for the right resources in order for them to perform the operations you want them to be able to perform. And so often we end up just giving them more stuff than they possibly need because managing this can be a burden. And this isn't true just of RBAC and Azure. It's true of any
Oh yeah.
authorization system, right? Like going all the way back to Windows NT domains, how often did we just give ourselves admin so we can make a thing work, or run the app as admin just so it would work? Because I couldn't be bothered figuring out what the right local group to put the app pull in to make it do the thing to talk to the database, right? So now that you can model this stuff in C# and these hosting integrations that we give you for all these Azure resources, do the right thing by default. So if you reference a storage blob from an app, like we configure it so that it can do like read the blobs. Like what else would it want to do? Like that's the minimum viable thing that you could possibly do, and so on and so forth. So I think this is going to be a big improvement.
This feature is insanely impressive.
Yeah.
And that's not just because I helped work on it. It is.
It's not just because of that.
Not just because of that.
There are other reasons.
One of the engineers that built it, Eric, this took several passes to get right, and I'm not sure right is the word, to get to where we are now.
Yeah.
And it's truly impressive how you can model like just a simple thing of saying my app talks to that storage and it needs these roles. Making that work, people don't appreciate how difficult it is to express that in what Azure gives you. Not just Azure, but any cloud, right?
Yeah.
They kind of give you this very low level. You get a low level experience for how you're supposed to express it, and it's like assembly. It's assembly for the cloud is like this language, and we have to kind of glean. We have to figure out what you're referencing, and then figure out what the roles are, and then figure out the right syntax to basically generate all the right applications. If you reference an existing resource versus a new one, there's different syntax. So there's a lot involved in making that call to with role assignments just work like magic.
Yeah,
it's really, really interesting.
And we're working on a mitigation for it, right? That we might service, but we don't know if we.
9.3. In 9.3, we will let you model an identity separately.
Okay.
We can assign to individual resources.
Just quickly, I'm going to bruise through these. I know they're all exciting and important. We don't.
Yeah, we can skip one.
Key Vault secret support in the box, very exciting. And default permissions for Key Vault. Another thing where instead we just gave it full admin rights. It's now Key Vault secrets user, which is the correct role for that thing. So very exciting.
A better default.
Yeah, much better default. Because we're opinionated, we're Aspire, we have opinions, and sometimes we change them. So, okay, all right. Fowler, can I show your screen?
I got stuff now. So is it?
Can I show it? Can I put it up?
Yeah, put it up.
Before presenting a screen, remove other screens. Since when? StreamYard.
Interesting.
Rude. Zoom that bad boy way in.
This is not the right. What is this?
This is your screen that you shared?
What? Hold on.
That's impressive, given you only have 2 screens. Like
I
have 5, so I do that all the time.
Hold on. Go ahead. I don't even know what that was. That must have been a window, not a screen.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So you Control Shift plus like once.
You can't see.
Control scroll. There you go. Perfect.
You.
No, that's too much. Don't
want to wrap.
Prompt.
I have a 2-line
pet
prompt.
peeve, the wrapping of mine. That
I know, right?
I have a 2-line prompt, and it really offends people.
Wait, hold on.
Why would you do such a thing?
You can't see this, right? You're only seeing my
No, you shared a window again.
We are seeing a terminal.
You gotta share your whole screen.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to share screen.
So the third in StreamYard, when you hit share, there's
it has different tabs. Oh.
And the third tab is screen.
Oh my gosh, I'm failing at this.
Isn't it amazing that
We've been
.NET
in this virtual world for 5 years, and we're all still struggling with this.
Oh my gosh! All right, re-screen share again.
I don't understand how anything we ship works.
So this is my Aspire AI chat sample, and in
Control Shift plus.
Can't see this.
No. There you go.
Aspire 9.1, this was tied to Azure. It had a Cosmos DB database. And I have it actually deployed to Azure in different places. And I have this model resource that runs as Olama locally. And if you're on Mac, it doesn't use GPU support. And then when you deploy, it will use OpenAI. This used to use Azure OpenAI when it was tied to Azure. Now it's like, I want a pure OpenAI experience, and I want to use Olama locally. So there's nothing here tied to Azure at all. It's containers. The front end is a React app using NPM and Caddy to serve it in publish mode. Backend is ASP.NET Core, SignalR to do the chat streaming and stuff. And then caching is done in Redis. And then I changed Cosmos to Postgres, so it could work anywhere. So this app is running somewhere, hopefully, and you can see super fancy. You can see this too. Like I'll scroll this.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Wonderful colors and icons, super nice. Here's Olama. Here's the child resource. Here's the database for conversations. If I look at the graph, you can see the pretty graph, all the links, things going on. Super nice. When I run the app, just to show you how the app works. The chat UI is here. This is my JavaScript front end. Here's my test. Turst party.
Oh, this UI.
This is
actually,
him. He's here to roast us.
like, this is really good for me. So like,
Was this
I'll take
vibe
it.
Totally vibe coded, right?
Yeah.
Of course it was.
Oh, I mean,
You're like, this is painful
I
to
know.
watch.
I know.
It's failing because Olama has to put the model in VRAM apparently, and then you'll see it wake up at some point, start responding, and I'm publishing every message through Redis, which is nuts. What model are you? And it doesn't know. Is it sentient?
You know when you tell Copilot to make it prettier, it will, right? Like mine always adds gradients for me.
This is nice to me. but to me, this is nice.
Years of
You have to
2007.
know that it's not nice to ask that question, right? So that's the issue.
I mean, also like consistent border radius would help.
I was
too.
going to say there's
Yeah.
the corners.
I don't care
of
about your
very-
radius.
You should know how I talk to Copilot though. I'm very polite.
I don't care.
I always
about
say
your
like, "This is a great start. Can we add some gradients now?" And then
No,
people will be like, "Why are
no.
you writing so many words?"
Anyway,
So let's get back. Yeah.
Anyway.
So, all right, Chad,
the
you've
app
got
is running. I have this new call to add Docker Compose publisher. This is new. This is brand new. So there's a new concept of publishers in the app host. If you've ever read the docs or ever used one of our commands, you can run the app host and pass in some flags to say don't run but output the manifest. And the manifest was this generic format that's JSON that essentially is a serialized form of the app host, right? The idea was tools take the manifest, convert it into something real, and then deploy it to Azure, Amazon. You know, there's Aspirate to go to Kubernetes, etc. We first class experience of having a publisher in the app host. The publisher gets the live model in process, and it can decide what to spit out. So you don't have to kind of go through this intermediate step of app host, manifest your format. You can go from live model to publisher to some output. So our best friend Dave, who wrote Aspirate, sent us a PR. We called him. Me and Maddy called him I want to say maybe a month ago.
Yeah, it's about a month ago.
And then the same week, he sent this PR for the publisher for Compose. So the other thing that we haven't spoken about is the Aspire CLI, which is brand new. In preview form, Maddy, it's in preview form. I'm sorry. It's in preview form. It's not ready for prime time yet, but it's still there. And if I run on my application, Aspire publish, I'll put it in Docker Infra. It builds the app host, it gets publishers, and it shows me two of them. One is manifest, one is compose. Manifest is always there. It's always in the app host by default. Compose shows up because I called that method in the application. If I didn't have it, it wouldn't show up. So I'll run compose, and it will launch the app host, run the publisher. It'll build the images. So hopefully it won't be super long. It'll build the images for the containers.
One thing I noticed is that's really beautiful CLI work you've got there.
It's amazing.
I love the emotes and the gradients.
We're using Spectre Console.
We are.
Woohoo!
This has
Patrick.
been. So I'm sure anyone who's been around .NET, especially off of just purely Windows, knows Chet Husk Barenfell on GitHub. Chet is our CLI guy, and when we told him we were building a CLI, he was like, "You're going to use Spectre, right? So you can do colors and animations." And we were like, "Should we?" And he was like, "Yeah."
The
And
really
now we're
cool
like,
thing here
this
is
has been, unfortunately, the most productive I've been in years has been changing the emojis and colors of
in
the
console.
CLI stuff.
So the way this works is it essentially calls the publisher. The publisher gets an API where it can report progress, and it renders it this way in the CLI. So the CLI isn't actually doing anything besides showing stuff from the publisher. If I run in that folder, I should see two files, an M file that spits out all the arguments for what needs to be filled in at deploy time, at runtime, whatever. And the compose file gets spat out. And the compose file is pretty interesting. It will represent all the environment variables, all the volumes, all the right things. because Compose is a container-based orchestration, we can represent with pretty high fidelity any project or any container in this model. So like we can translate pretty much one-to-one from Aspire to this. So we capture things like arguments for command lines. We can capture any parameter expressed in the app host can be hoisted to an environment variable expression. Even cooler, when you use wait for, we will translate wait fors into Docker Compose dependencies, depends on. So we can kind of model all those things in the Compose format. And then we spit out the M file to tell you, hey, put some values in here. No, did I lose my undo buffer? Oh my God, my demo sucks. Is this gonna work? There you go. Passwords there. If I run cd compose up, app starts up, log spew like crazy. Why did it exit? Where's my Docker? Chat API crashed because my password. Oh God, the password sucks. Okay, let me try this one more time. You know what I did before? I told like generate. This is like the worst piece of AI.
You're burning trees to generate a password.
Right.
Look at that.
Don't you pay for 1Password?
Hey! Don't. I'm trying to show the product, Maddy. How about you relax? Okay, how about you chill?
You should use Bitwarden anyways though. Big .net
Should I?
shop
True.
and free.
Still failing. What's it?
This is so much fun. I really like this live stream.
Oh, hold on.
Man, you should join more.
This
Yeah,
worked just before I tried it. No, something is like complaining. Let me attempt to figure out live. Stop.
Was the password persisted in your Postgres from a previous deploy? And you changed it?
That's what it feels like.
Could do.
Just
Could
nuke all
be.
the containers.
Yeah,
Purge.
I will delete everything once it stops.
Everyone knows about Damian's latest contribution to the community, right? .NET Purge. It's a .NET tool that does a .NET clean on everything and then actually deletes bin and obj for you.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I use it
I didn't know that.
every single day.
Because I manually was doing that for years. I'm like, I should just automate this. I should just do
There's a
something.
tool now.
God, why is it not part of the product though? I guess that's
No,
my
seriously.
Well, sometimes this is how you get stuff to happen: is you make a tool and you talk about it, and then people are like, "Oh,
Yeah.
Oh.
and then some engineer on the team goes, I'm just going to go and do this, so I don't have to go. And that way, I don't have to go through the whole like
Let me get the
propose a
link.
feature, do a thing. It's like I'll just do it and put it there, and someone will do it
Okay.
properly.
I'm curious. How many of you live watching right now have manually deleted
Oh.
your bin and obj?
The chat is going nuts.
I want to see it. Just let us know. Let us know.
So hang on, put a 1 in chat.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Chat room, whether you're on YouTube or Twitch, put a 1 in chat if you've ever manually deleted bin and
God.
obj.
Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God.
Right?
Oh
Or
God.
maybe you've zipped up a project to send to somebody and you had to reach into the zip file and delete bin and obj because the zip file was megabytes big. Yeah, just a few people.
It's like the same thing for node modules, though. Someone should just create one of those. It just goes and wipes out.
Shut up, Gerald. Hi, Brady. Oh my
So-
God. Yeah, Maui trauma, deleting bin obj was like a big part of Maui development. And there were always 3 different places there were bin obj because of the 3 different head in Xamarin land back in the day. So I got very good at that.
I'm pretty sad.
I'm enjoying live coding with Fowler here. This
This
is
is horrible. Like, I'm trying to figure out what the Postgres wants.
see, it's not just me that live codes and goes, what the heck is going on here?
Did you give it a password that was too complex?
I don't know.
Why don't you just type a password like password?
Still fails.
What's the error it's giving you? Password auth failed.
There's got to be a volume on disk somewhere it's trying to connect to.
Oh, you know what? You know what? It's the volume.
There you go. You didn't even read it first.
Oh, I didn't kill the volume.
Yep, that's
Okay.
why.
Okay.
Volume did its job.
That's what it was.
Full credit.
So I did delete
Pine
this.
mentioned that earlier.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I know. I didn't even go here.
Well, this is what Pine does. Pine says something, and then 3 to 6 months later, someone else says it, and everyone's like, "That's actually not a bad idea." And Pine's just like, "Cool." My work here is
What
done.
about the volume?
So, David, while you're showing us here, I noticed that the dashboard isn't included in the Docker Compose.
That's right. It is not by default. We do not have that part done yet. It's still in preview. Jeff. It's a preview, Jeff. Good question.
I'm asking the witness leading questions.
I know. I'm just trolling you. It doesn't work still. Still failing. Different error?
I think at this point, just Control Alt Delete.
You got a connection refused error. That's even more.
That's
hard.
fine.
Doesn't work.
That's less bad.
Wow. Okay.
We don't have health checks expressed in this thing yet.
Right.
That's a missing part. But
Does that mean it's all running right now? Or are you stopping it?
I just stopped it.
Oh, okay.
So I'll try one more time. If it does not work, I shall move on. But it will work this time.
Time for Prez. Thanks, Claudia. Agree.
Oh, it worked.
Work that time.
There we go.
Yay, that took long. All right, same app in Compose. Compose gets this super fancy feature in Docker UI. I didn't want that. I wanted the actual endpoint 8006. Here's the app running in Compose. New one. Test. All right, that was super fast. What model is this?
And you can even include like typos when you're asking messages. Like it'll still understand it.
So this is using OpenAI when I composed because I said publish.
Oh, I was going to ask, like, what? That was too fast. Like, how
So
did
the
that?
model,
And
yeah.
I didn't see you enable GPUs or anything. So, like,
So
how
the
did
model
this
is
work?
like so. All I'm doing here is saying when I run in publish mode,
I
the
see.
LLM is actually OpenAI, and it
Got it.
preserves a string and says make the user pass in the OpenAI key.
Got it.
So we basically parameterize all the things that were parameters, and now the whole thing is like deployable. So the message here is that you will start to see us and the community hopefully build publishers to target different things to go in different places, right? You could wire this up on your VPC, VPS, like super cheap VPS. Publish your Aspire app and then throw it into your VM somewhere. Run it locally. If you saw me asking all these questions on Twitter about like where do you deploy your personal projects, it was because we were messing around with this stuff, trying to figure out what a cool demo would be to kind of show an end to end. This is yeah. Go ahead.
I've been setting up my Raspberry Pi with Tower with Kubernetes.
See,
so that I can install and run stuff over there with this.
So I'll show
just to make sure Pete this lands right.
Yeah.
So far, we're nearly 2 years into Aspire. One of the big things about Aspire that we keep going on about is that it's extensible. You write C# and you write an integration that extends Aspire. We give you these very base level primitives and a life cycle, and then you can build new hosting integrations and whatnot. This is effectively a new type of primitive. You can now write C# in order to control how to deploy an Aspire app. Like that is what's happening here. Imagine today you write .NET Publish at the command line. You can't really extend what .NET Publish does. It always just publishes your app and produces a bunch of artifacts. And then we did Container Publish a couple of years ago. With Aspire, the extensibility model is C#. So when you want to take what you've written in your app host and publish that somewhere, that is produce a set of assets. That's what publish means. It means give me a set of assets that I can then deploy somewhere, right? Using some deployment toolchain. You can write C# to produce assets now. So you want to fundamentally change what your app host project produces, go and write a publisher and then plug in and then use the Aspire CLI to execute that publisher.
Bye-bye.
All right, I can't spell, so I'm going to add the...
Yeah, thanks for all your work.
Yeah. Bye.
Yep.
All right, I'm
drop
sticking
as well.
around. I don't actually have a meeting right now, so very exciting.
I'm here to show y'all stuff.
Yeah.
If you
And
have time.
okay, so hold on, pause quickly. Sorry. Oh, Jeff, you going? Bye, Jeff.
Yep, gotta run.
Okay,
Have
see ya.
fantastic stuff. Hey, friends, make sure you install Aspire 9.2. And I got to make sure that we call out. We have an event coming up in just a few weeks here, the .NET Conf Focus on Modernization.
Oh.
If you have older projects that you want to take advantage of .NET Aspire, we're going to be talking about all kinds of modernization topics during that that'll get you ready so you can use this.
Good ad.
Yeah,
I'm talking at that. I
All
should figure out what I'm going to talk about.
yeah, write a talk or something. All right, catch you later,
Okay,
friends.
bye. Now that you're left with the Three Stooges here, quickly, we say deploy and publish and provision and all of these words. And one thing I am trying to clarify more as I say things, but also that I think would be helpful for context for this, right? Is we're talking about these as publishers in the way that they create artifacts. So these are not actually deploying anywhere. They are putting them on disk, which is what AZD InfraSynth did. If you did that for the intermediate step, AZD did both the translation, the publishing, and the actual provisioning and deployment, which is taking everything that's written down, creating resources from them, and then sticking all the stuff into those things. And so what we're doing here for now, right now, is purely the publishing step. Like we're giving you the basically like IL, the intermediate language for whatever you use to deploy to publish. And so Docker Compose, YAML, Kubernetes, whatever. At some point we want to do Terraform, all of those things. And then you'll be able to use those tools as you do today to deploy the thing.
Right. That's the critical thing.
And deploy your cloud infra. Yeah.
Separating those two steps is critical because people use different things to do the actual deployment or provisioning,
Brady, I hope
or they have entirely different teams that do the provisioning, right? And so being able to separate those two things so that you can have extract all the value out of the app host, out of your app model, and make that produce the assets that preserves all of the shape of the application, preserves all the parameters, the holes for the values that you have to provide, and then you can literally hand that off if that's your flow, right? But we're not going to stop there. Like we're absolutely going to keep going so that at some point you'll be able to say, hey, not only does this publisher produce assets, but we want it to be able to push directly to an environment as well. This is, as I said, this is just the start.
Shameless plug while you're here. I wrote a blog post recently about modeling your environment with Aspire. One of the things we want you to understand about Aspire is not just about like being the equivalent of Compose. It's about describing your app. So, and I draw comparisons to the gRPC and OpenAPI. You want to be able to describe what your app is doing so the tool chains can take advantage of it. So if you're thinking about why we have this support for publishers, it's because we have all this rich information about your app. You told us you want Postgres, Redis. You told us you want to use storage. You said you want to have this assignment for roles. We have this rich graph of like knowledge about what you need to run and publish. And the next logical phase is, okay, well, we can take that information and turn it into Compose files, Azure bicep files, all these other different kinds of representations for it. So I added Aspire hosting Kubernetes, which is also in preview still. And I added this call to add Kubernetes publisher. So same pattern that we have for Compose, we have for Kubernetes. So I go in the command line and I can kill this Compose from running. And I can run Aspire. It finishes when it stops. I think it's super slow.
Gracefully stopping.
It's too graceful. It's trying really hard to sleep. Please.
So graceful.
I mean, I could force it, whatever. Okay. I could run Aspire publish K8 infra. And if I'm not in the right folder, it'll find it, build the app host. This will get much faster in future versions. You can see I now have 3 options. I have Manifest, Compose, and Kubernetes. If I run this, if I open the K8 infra folder, you'll see a Helm chart. If you don't know Kubernetes, well, I can't help you. But if you do know it, we give you a Helm chart that represents all the values you have in your application. So same pattern where there's values here extracted as parameters. There's the Helm chart itself. You can change the settings. And here's the YAML per service, per app. So cache, Chat API has one. And this basically describes in native Kubernetes language, in native Helm, what you described in your app host in C#. So we have this kind of translation stuff going on here. And this is just the beginning. We can do a lot more with just when we have these primitives, we can do a lot more things with that.
You have made Jeremy so happy, and just for the record, that means you've like tangentially made Barry happy because he loves Jeremy, even though he pretends he doesn't. And that's actually really good for us because we did not tell Barry that we were shipping a CLI until a couple weeks ago, and then we had to do the security review, and he was very upset with me.
He's very happy.
Thank you, Jeremy. Make sure you tell him we are great.
So this blog post. Second shameless plug. This blog post kind of describes this process. I wrote it as a teaser before we had this feature, but the intent was to express to you, we're building a compiler toolchain. You are basically describing your app as source code. If you want a mental model, this application, you told us you want an AI model, you want to use Phi locally, you want to use Postgres with the volume, with PG admin. You give us you give the compiler all these hints, and it takes all the information and spits out something else. So I do recommend reading that post once you've seen this demo, because it kind of hopefully will click what we're building. I will show something else that I don't think Maddy has seen yet.
Oh no!
I'll show two things.
On.
Two things. Damian's so used to it.
Last night.
He's not even phased. He's not even phased by it, right? He's just like, oh my gosh, what's David gonna show?
Well, the thing is, like, Damian is just gonna go either fix it or do his own thing. I'm gonna have to like tell everybody about this in 3 days when they're like, Fowler did this. What does this mean?
So I guess the first thing I want to show actually is more crazy. So this is a sample app that is showing something new.
Oh my god, are you going to show this right now on stream?
Yeah, it's fine. We're not shipping this, but it shows the future direction. So people are always asking, hey, can I not use ACA? Can I use something else? Can I use app service? Can I use AKS? Can I use all these things? We added code in Aspire 9.2 that lets you describe that you want a container app environment. So you can express no, give me a container app environment in my application, right? And that led us to discuss and figure out, hey, it turns out now that we have the entire model in the app host, you can model many compute environments. You can model Kubernetes, you can model app service, you can model ACI, you can model basically anything that you can think of, you can model in the app host, right? So this is a prototype. It barely works. This is not shipping yet, at least.
This is literally just a demo. Like it is nothing more than a demo. But
it's a demo.
It shows what's possible.
It just shows the potential.
Right. When you build new things like this, it's important you build more than one implementation to prove that it doesn't just work for the one that you built. Right?
Exactly. So what this is showing is the same way you have your app today. Like this is just me messing around with stuff. Like this is important. Storage, key vault with a secret. If you haven't seen this before, this is the lower level Azure API. It's super gross. We're gonna make it cleaner, but this is like how you add a secret to the key vault. So I add a key vault, I add a storage, I add my project. This is all normal, and this is a top secret key vault secret. And then this is kind of the different thing, right? It's not the container app environment. It's not the Kubernetes AKS. It's the app service plan, and it just shows that we can now pull off being able to describe arbitrary compute environments in the app host, and you could publish this now to Azure and have it work. Now, there's a ton of things missing, and this is just a prototype, but it kind of shows you now we can express the compute environment, the connections between the compute environment and projects and containers. You can model RBAC to Azure resources. And we can take that entire graph of information and spit out like all the right things. So this is an example of app service. But let me show you something else. So someone asked in the chat, like, what about CI/CD? Like, can you do that as well? Can you figure out how to do CI/CD? And we've been mulling over what it means to express this, right? And what will be the most usable format for people to kind of consume in their applications. So this sample shows what I call the Uber publisher. And this publisher is basically just, you'll see it at some point, but here's my custom publisher. And the intent was it just knows about all the resource types. It's going to compile your thing into a usable output somewhere. But when you run it, what it does is it spits out this execution graph. And you could think of it this way. I haven't changed the code. The code is the same code. I still did with reference to projects. There's nothing special about what I wrote here. This is just the Aspire. This is the Aspire code, right? Give me a container app environment. Give me Azure storage. Give me a project with a health check. This is not new. This thing is just reasoning about the graph and spitting out something else. So deploy container app environment using AZCLI. Deploy these things. Then deploy this phase. Then build a container image. Put the outputs from that one into this. If you squint, this looks like a build script, right? Run this, then run this, then run that, then flow the output from this into that thing. You could squint and picture spitting out something that can be used in CI/CD.
So this is literally what I did very early on. I went away for a week and I manually wrote instructions on how to deploy like an Aspire starter app
remember that.
using AZ because AZD didn't exist in terms of Aspire back then. The way that you did stuff was you used AZ or you wrote Bicep. And I didn't know Bicep, so I was like, right, and all the docs were like use AZ. And so I wrote a manual, like a little document on how to deploy an app using AZ. And it's all these steps, like everything is practically manual, right? And we said at the time, wouldn't it be nice if you could .NET publish the app host and like pass an argument and it spat out like a bash script that called AZ and did all this stuff for you? And we kind of chuckled and yeah, that would be funny. But we're literally, that's what this is. That's it. in effect. Yeah.
And this kind of prints out a fake execution. It kind of spits out just a random set of calls that would be made, like run AZ creation. This whole thing is like fake up what you would run in a script. So you can imagine taking this and making it a PowerShell script, or making it a shell script, or making it a GitHub action, or making it. So we have all the information required to produce those things. I think now it's just kind of like, what are we going to do first? What is most useful for you? So from a feedback point of view, we want to know like, what would you want? Because we're gonna have experiments now with like a bunch of these systems. One really cool side effect of what we're doing is we have an internal system at Microsoft that we use to deploy stuff, and it's not what you have access to in the open source world. And we built a publisher for that system. So we use Aspire internally, and we built a publisher for that internal system. And we can produce similar artifacts for that system from your super terse definition of your application. So we think this has a lot of promise going forward.
Fowler, how would you mark something for non-publishing?
Today, if you use exclude from manifest, it actually still works in these publishers, unfortunately.
We'll just need to exclude from publish.
We need to fix it.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there's a question in the chat on Twitch that Redis and Postgres is deployed by operators. Mm-hmm. So they shouldn't be deployed by Aspire. So
this is super important, and I'm going to write a blog post about this. Not that we have the actual apps here. When that blog post says model your environment, it means represent your situation in Aspire. If you want to dev with a container and publish with an external resource, write an if statement and say, when I'm running, use a container. When I'm not running, get it from somewhere else. Like you can say that, and then all of your provisioning goes away in publish mode and becomes inputs, right? Yep. It says, don't provision this thing. Instead, force the caller to give me the information. It's like DI, right? Like you're going to create it in this one case, and then in the other cases, you will be asking the caller for more information. So
and just to be clear, like when you say have an if statement, some people might balk at that because like, oh, I don't want my app host littered with if statements. You can start with an if statement, but if you're finding that you want to express these conventions that you have more concretely in a more composable fashion, maybe write some code, put it in a package, and let people reference it. You can do that. This is an application model for that reason. You can make it on line 6 where you've got builder.add Kubernetes publisher. There's no reason you couldn't have a package that brings in builder.add my company's conventions about how we do run local versus publishing. Yep. And you don't have to do if statements. That method would subscribe to a bunch of events in the app host lifecycle and would just mutate resources according to the conventions that you've decided. So you could then say automatically, oh, Redis always runs as a container locally, but it always projects to this other thing when we publish, right? If this other publisher is active or whatever it might be, it's just code. Like you can create that logic. So you start here. You start with an if statement. It's the most basic construct, right? And you say, do this in one environment, otherwise, or this one context, otherwise do that. But if you want to codify that, if you want to boil that down to become a new standard, just move that code into a lifecycle event, into an app host event, and then move it into a package and then just call a method to activate it, right? This is very, very similar to how you would do something in any other .NET application that has an app model like this, for example, like ASP.NET Core. Right? You can do statements, or you can in your program.cs, or you can write visitors or whatever it might be, depending on what it is that you're mutating.
Yeah, it is very. It's. I feel like I remind myself of this a lot, and I say it a lot, but it is just code, and that is always.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, like I can just put that in an if. Why did I not think about that?
This.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Is
Wait,
publish
this
mode?
is the wrong one. In run mode, use Postgres in database container. In publish mode, get it from somewhere else. Get it from the outside.
What is that? What is that typed as, out of interest? Is that just iResource Builder?
Yeah.
Oh, resource with connection string. Okay. Did it do the? Well, is that because add connection string? Okay. It anchored it.
That's why. Because this is typed as that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So there really becomes this like two modes that the app host runs in, and you can express them however you want.
Mhm.
And everything so far has really been run mode, with the exception of the publish as container app methods, right?
Yes.
Or publish as Docker file. And so now we're expanding the world of hosting integrations to also allow new publish mode stuff.
Do we have publish as connection string? I thought we did.
We do, but it kind of sucks right now.
Oh. But that's effectively what line 8 to 10 is trying to do. Like, right?
Correct. This thing,
You can just say publish
I
as
can do
connection
this.
string, and that gives you the same effect. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, it's pretty exciting. It's gonna be I don't know. The more I think about publishers and the CLI and all, I don't know. I just get very excited. There's a lot of stuff we can do. And it's super extensible. And obviously, like, this is the .NET community stand-up. This is we're all .NET people here, right? And we know a lot of you. And we're going to show all the demos in C# and .NET. But you all have to go and remind your friends and coworkers that this works with everything else too. Like JavaScript and Python, very easily first-party app host support. And then I think we have Go in the toolkit. We have, I think we have Rust somewhere. We have specific stuff. Oh, bye, Fowler. We have specific stuff for Node, NPM, all that. So anyways, make sure you tell your non.NET friends.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, on that note, and then there were two.
Yeah.
So I guess it's time to wrap up. But do we sell that .NET merch? Yes, this is on Bonfire somewhere. It donates to something.
This one
Damian's
is not.
shirt is
This
not.
one is exclusive. We have to get an updated one of this to based on the CLI though.
Yeah, we do, and it needs to have actually like syntactically valid APIs.
We need an Aspire run.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
So, all right, everybody, happy 9/2 day, happy April. Enjoy. Send us your feedback, and we will see you next time.